There is a small, ordinary habit that quiet, steady people seem to share across very different cultures and very different centuries. One that costs nothing and takes less than a minute to complete each morning. It has little to do with loud declarations or grand speeches, and much more to do with a few simple words spoken honestly before the day has a chance to speak first. These words rarely sound impressive to anyone listening from the outside, yet something about speaking them steadily, morning after morning, seems to quietly change how the rest of the day gets carried. In this journey, we look gently at 12 small reasons certain morning words seem to quietly build a steadier, calmer kind of confidence over time, one ordinary sentence at a time. The few words that quietly change posture. Old town criers, responsible for announcing news aloud in public squares each morning, were trained to stand a particular way before speaking a single word. Shoulders back, chin level, feet planted firmly on the stone beneath them. The posture came first, deliberately, and the words followed only once the body had already, quietly, taken a more settled and grounded shape than it had held only moments before that. Nobody explained exactly why the order mattered so much at the time, only that skipping the posture and rushing straight to the words never seemed to carry quite the same weight. Modern research on posture and mood has quietly circled back to something these old criers seem to understand instinctively, that the body and the voice influence each other in both directions, not merely one way as most people assume without thinking twice. Standing taller doesn't just reflect confidence already present. It can also, in a small but measurable way, help create it fresh each morning, before any words are even spoken aloud at all. A slumped body speaking confident words still tends to feel oddly hollow, as though the sentence hasn't quite found its proper home yet. This is why the words a person chooses to say each morning rarely travel alone, since they arrive already carrying whatever posture the body happened to be holding at that exact moment of speaking. A slouched voice and a straightened voice can say the very same sentence, yet somehow land completely differently in the body hearing it, almost like two different messages entirely. Many people never notice this quiet connection until they try saying the same words twice, once slumped and once standing tall, and feel the surprising difference for themselves. Why saying it aloud works better than thinking. Old scholars, long before printed books were common or affordable, were trained to recite their lessons aloud, rather than simply reading them silently in their own heads, believing the voice fixed knowledge more firmly and the eyes alone ever could manage on their own. This wasn't superstition so much as an early, practical understanding of something modern researchers would later study far more carefully in proper laboratories, decades and decades afterward. The habit persisted for centuries across very different schools and traditions, long before anyone could fully explain why it seemed to work so reliably. Speaking a sentence aloud engages the ears, the mouth, and the mind all at once, creating a small feedback loop that silent thinking simply cannot produce on its own, no matter how many times the same thought gets replayed quietly inside. A musician who sings a difficult passage aloud tends to learn it noticeably faster than one who only reads the same sheet music in silence, page after quiet page. The extra sensory input seems to matter more than most people would ever expect from something so ordinary and small. This is likely why a quietly spoken morning sentence tends to settle differently than the very same sentence merely thought, since the spoken version arrives back at the mind twice, once from intention and once again through the ear itself, only moments later. The voice, in this small way, becomes its own quiet witness, confirming what the mind alone could never quite confirm by itself. A thought can be doubted easily, but a sentence heard aloud, in one's own familiar voice, is harder to simply wave away. for a quiet moment, notice the sound of your own voice the next time you speak, even briefly, to nobody in particular, without judging it, simply noticing it. That same ordinary voice may be doing more work each morning than most people ever pause long enough to realize. An old morning habit kings once used. Certain royal courts, according to old court records, required a formal proclamation to be spoken aloud each morning before the day's business could properly begin, regardless of how urgent other matters waiting nearby happened to feel that day. The words themselves rarely announced anything dramatic, often little more than a simple statement of intention for the day quietly ahead, spoken calmly before advisors and attendants gathered in the hall. The ritual rarely changed once established, passed down carefully from one reign to the next, without much alteration at all. Historians studying these old customs have noticed something rather ordinary and human hiding underneath the formal royal language and ceremony involved. That even people with enormous power still felt the need to speak something steady aloud before facing an uncertain day of decisions ahead of them. Power, it seems, never fully removed the need for a small verbal anchor each morning, no matter how secure the throne might have otherwise appeared to outsiders. Wealth and title, it turns out, rarely solve the ordinary human need for a steady beginning. Modern mornings rarely include a formal proclamation of any kind, court records or otherwise, yet the underlying need these old customs quietly answered hasn't disappeared along with the courts and crowns that once required it so faithfully for centuries on end. Something in a person still seems to want a few honest words spoken first, before anything else gets the chance to speak or interrupt that quiet beginning. The setting has changed considerably, yet the small human need underneath it has stayed remarkably the same. Ahead in this video, we look closely at the strange moment when a person's own spoken voice quietly starts to feel like actual proof of something. The moment your own voice becomes evidence, the mind, quite curiously, tends to treat heard speech as more convincing than silent thought, even when the two contain the exact same words and the very same speaker thinking them over and over, in private, without ever saying them aloud. A thought remains easily dismissed as just a thought, while a sentence actually spoken aloud somehow carries the added weight of having been witnessed by someone, even if that someone is only the speaker themselves, alone in a quiet room. This small difference matters more than it first appears to, in ways most people never stop to consider. This explains why silently thinking, "I can handle today," rarely lands with the same quiet weight as actually saying the very same 5 words aloud in an empty, ordinary room early in the morning before anyone else is fully awake. The spoken version becomes, almost immediately, a small piece of lived evidence rather than a passing, easily forgotten idea drifting through the mind unnoticed and quickly replaced by the next one. The ears, in a sense, become a second witness the mind didn't previously have access to. Over time, a person who regularly speaks a few steady words aloud each morning is quietly building a small, private collection of such evidence, sentence by sentence, day after day, whether they realize it or not at the time. The mind, oddly enough, seems to trust its own voice more readily than its own silent, wandering thoughts, almost as though hearing carries more authority than merely thinking ever could. This quiet collection grows slowly, rarely noticed until someone looks back and finds it already fairly substantial. Why confidence whispers instead of shouting? A quiet business owner known throughout her small town for calm, unhurried decisions rarely raised her voice in any meeting. Yet, colleagues consistently described her as the most confident person in almost every room she entered, without exception, year after year. Confidence, it turns out, doesn't actually require volume at all, though it often gets mistakenly measured that particular way by people watching from the outside, judging quickly and moving on. Her calm, steady tone rarely changed regardless of how tense or urgent the surrounding conversation happened to be that day. Loud bravado frequently signals the opposite of genuine confidence, since it usually works overtime trying to convince a room of something the speaker doesn't yet fully believe about themselves. Deep down, in quiet, private moments away from any audience at all. Real steadiness, by comparison, rarely needs an audience at all to feel true, since it was never really performing for anyone else in the first place, only speaking honestly to itself. The loudest voice in a room is often quietly the least certain one present. This is worth remembering on mornings when quiet, honest words feel almost too small or too plain to matter much at all in the grand scheme of an entire day stretching out ahead, waiting to be lived through 1 hour at a time. The quietest sentence, spoken steadily and meant sincerely, often carries far more actual weight than the loudest and most confident-sounding speech, delivered without much real feeling underneath it, once anyone stops to genuinely notice. Plain words, said honestly, tend to outlast impressive ones said only for effect. A forgotten difference between pride and steadiness. Old bridge builders in certain regions often worked for years on projects they knew, from the very beginning, they would likely never see fully completed or opened to actual daily traffic and use within their own working lifetime at all. Their satisfaction, according to old letters and records left behind by their families, came quietly from the careful work itself, not from public praise or grand recognition arriving later once the bridge finally opened. Many never learned whether their particular section held firm for decades afterward, and seemed to have made peace with that uncertainty. Pride, by contrast, tends to depend heavily on an audience, requiring someone else to notice, to comment, to confirm that the effort was genuinely worthwhile and worth the trouble involved in the first place, before it can properly settle into place. Steadiness needs no such witness at all, since it was never built around being seen or praised by anyone else to begin with, only around the quiet, private act of doing the work honestly, day after day. One collapses quickly without applause, while the other simply continues on regardless. Morning words spoken quietly to oneself, with nobody else present or listening at all, actually test this exact difference rather well, since there is no audience present to perform for in an otherwise empty, quiet room before the household wakes. Words that still feel true when spoken alone tend to be the steadier, more honest kind worth genuinely keeping and repeating each morning going forward. Words that only feel good when overheard by someone else may be worth a second, more honest look. A man named Devraj once told a colleague he had started saying, "I am ready for today," quietly while tying his shoes each morning. Within a couple of months, he noticed himself hesitating far less before difficult conversations than he used to, for reasons he still couldn't fully explain. The sentence that rewires a nervous morning. Old stage actors, describing their own shaking hands and racing hearts just minutes before stepping out in front of a waiting audience, were often taught a small but strange trick passed down through generations of performers before them, quietly, backstage, before every single show. Rather than telling themselves to calm down entirely, many were taught instead to quietly say aloud, "I am excited," using the very same nervous energy, but renaming it completely, without trying to erase it first. The trick rarely removed the shaking entirely, yet it seemed to change what the shaking meant. This small shift in wording works because fear and excitement produce almost identical physical sensations in the body. The same racing heart, the same shallow breathing, the same restless energy running just beneath the skin at that exact moment. The body, it turns out, doesn't always know the difference between the two feelings on its own, and often simply follows whatever label the mind quietly hands it first, before any real decision gets made. Renaming the sensation rather than fighting it directly, seems to work far better in practice. A nervous morning, treated this same way, greeted with a sentence like, "I am ready," rather than "I am worried," rarely erases the nervous energy present entirely, since the body still feels exactly the same underneath either sentence chosen that particular morning, before the day has even properly begun. But it does quietly redirect where that same energy ends up flowing once the day fully begins in earnest, hour by hour, task by task, conversation by conversation. The feeling stays, yet its direction and purpose quietly, noticeably shift. Why repeating words slowly changes belief. Old engravers, working carefully by hand on metal plates, long before modern printing existed, would trace the very same thin line again and again with a fine tool. Each single pass cutting only slightly deeper in the pass that had come immediately before it, hour after patient hour. A single pass alone barely marked the surface at all, yet the pattern, repeated patiently enough times, eventually became permanent and unmistakably clear to anyone who later ran a finger across the plate. No single pass alone ever explained the final, deep result. Belief seems to form in the mind through a remarkably similar slow process, one repeated sentence at a time, rather than through any single dramatic moment of sudden realization or discovery arriving all at once, fully formed and complete. The first morning a person says, "I am steady" aloud, it may barely register as true at all. Yet the 10th or 100th repetition tends to sit rather differently in the body than that very first uncertain attempt did. Repetition, quietly, does the work that a single powerful moment rarely manages alone. This is why a single motivational moment rarely changes very much on its own, no matter how inspiring or well-timed it happened to feel in the moment it was first spoken or heard by someone hoping for quick change. But the same plain, ordinary sentence, repeated patiently, morning after morning, quietly carves something that eventually starts to hold its own steady, lasting shape. Much like that engraved line, patience, more than inspiration, seems to be doing most of the actual work here. The mirror habit few people ever try. Old dance instructors, training students in front of large practice mirrors for many generations, insisted their students watch their own reflection carefully while moving, believing the eyes needed to confirm what the body merely felt on its own, without outside proof of any kind at all. Watching oneself, it turns out, changes the exercise considerably, adding a small layer of honest, undeniable feedback that feeling alone rarely provides by itself, no matter how confident the movement felt internally at the time. The mirror rarely lied, even when the body's own sense of itself quietly did. Very few people ever try speaking their morning words while actually looking directly into their own eyes in a mirror, since it tends to feel oddly uncomfortable at first, almost more vulnerable in speaking the exact same words while looking elsewhere in the room entirely, at the floor or the window instead. That particular discomfort, though, often reveals rather clearly how much of the sentence was actually believed and how much was simply quietly recited out of habit alone, without much real feeling attached to it at all. The eyes, it seems, are harder to fool than the ears. Trying the habit even once tends to be revealing in a way few people expect beforehand, since a sentence that feels perfectly fine spoken toward the floor can suddenly feel strangely difficult spoken directly toward one's own steady reflection instead, only a few feet away in the quiet bathroom mirror. That small difference in difficulty often points toward exactly where the real, honest work still quietly remains to be done. Sentence by sentence, morning by morning going forward. Most people discover this only once they finally actually try it themselves, a quiet signal your body learns to trust. Athletes preparing for competition often develop small, specific pre-game rituals. A particular phrase repeated quietly, a particular sequence of movements performed the very same way each time. regardless of how differently each individual competition actually unfolds once it properly begins in front of a crowd. The ritual itself rarely changes the outcome directly, yet it reliably signals to the body that a familiar, practiced state is about to begin, the same way it always has before. The body seems to relax slightly the moment it recognizes the familiar signal arriving once again. The body, over time, learns to associate a specific repeated phrase with a specific calm, ready feeling. The same way a familiar bell or sound can trigger a particular feeling almost automatically, without any real conscious thought required at all in that exact moment it happens. Morning words repeated consistently enough, day after ordinary day, seem to build this same kind of quiet, reliable signal over time, long before the person consciously notices the connection forming at all. The words become less a sentence and more a familiar, trusted cue the body already recognizes. This is why the specific words chosen matter somewhat less than most people initially assume when starting this particular habit for the very first time. And consistency matters considerably more than most people expect at first glance, before they've actually tried it for themselves. A steady, ordinary phrase repeated faithfully for months tends to outperform an elaborate, poetic one used only occasionally, once in a while, without any real regularity behind it at all. The plain, boring sentence, said daily, usually wins out over the beautiful one said rarely, the small ritual where confidence quietly grows. A single word spoken clearly inside an empty stone canyon can travel and echo for several long seconds afterward, continuing to sound long after the original speaker has already fallen completely silent and moved on to something else entirely, walking further down the quiet trail ahead. Morning words seem to behave in a remarkably similar way, continuing to quietly echo through an entire day long after they were first spoken in that empty, quiet room before anyone else had properly woken up yet. The echo fades gradually, never all at once, the same way confidence itself tends to settle in. Confidence built this particular way rarely arrives all at once in one single dramatic morning, the way a canyon's echo doesn't arrive as one single unbroken sound, but rather as many small overlapping repetitions fading gently into one another over the course of several long seconds. Each individual morning contributes only a small amount on its own, barely noticeable, yet the accumulated echo across many mornings becomes something rather different, and considerably steadier than any single morning could have managed entirely on its own. Nobody notices the shift happening in real time, only afterward, looking back. Perhaps quiet confidence was never meant to arrive through one grand single sentence spoken perfectly on one particular occasion, but rather through many small, ordinary ones, repeated faithfully and quietly, until the echo itself simply became part of how a person walked calmly through their own steady day, one morning at a time. The words themselves rarely stayed dramatic or memorable in any obvious way, yet their quiet, cumulative effect seemed to outlast almost anything more impressive ever could have managed alone. Perhaps the right words were never meant to convince anyone else, only to quietly remind the speaker of something they had somehow, temporarily, forgotten about themselves along the way. A morning sentence doesn't need to feel entirely true the very first time it's spoken aloud in an empty room, the way a single small step doesn't need to feel like an entire finished journey on its own. Somewhere between an old town crier standing tall before speaking and an old tea master allowing each unhurried word its own quiet space to finish, there is a simpler version of the same idea waiting for any ordinary morning. Confidence, quiet and steady, rarely announces its own arrival with any real fanfare or drama at all. It tends to simply be there one ordinary morning, already settled comfortably into the voice, as though it had been waiting nearby the entire time. Maybe it's enough, for now, to simply notice which words get spoken first each morning, and to wonder gently what might change if those words were chosen with a little more care.